Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be going over the next Runemaster build. Yes, the next Runemaster build. As soon as I finished the Ignite Glyph of Dominion, I started working hard, trying to figure out what else I could do with Runemaster, and of course, this is what I came up with. So, it's no surprise that Octahedron, specifically, is very strong right now. It is probably the best runic invocation, as it's the only one capable of doing decent clear damage. Now, of course, I actually found a way to super juice our single target, and that's through the usage of the Igneous Rain invocation. Now, all of this combined leads to a very interesting playstyle where you just swap one skill with one skill on your bar, and bam, you swap from single target to clear to single target to clear. And overall, I really like the playstyle. I like the build so far. And I think there are certain things that could change, but overall, this is a pretty solid build. So let's talk about how this works. The first item that we're building around is, of course, Fundamental Criterion. This is a body armor that gives us a lot of more damage for our, of course, our invocations. And this makes playing an actual invocation build actually function. Without this chest, you're not going to be able to play an invocation build pretty well. And I'm a little annoyed by that. I don't think invocation builds should be so high investment per se, but I really do think that like in a high investment scenario, invocations can really, show off with stuff like this. And eventually when the Dust to Dawn scepter is fixed as well. Now, this means that we're running something with a Heo rune. I mean, I think no, it's a Ra rune in the middle. So we're limited to Ra runes in the middle because we're focusing on a fire invocation. So for instance, we're using Igneous Rain, which has a Ra rune in the middle, and that because it's Heo Ra Ra, and then we have, of course, Hydrodon, which is like Gon plus Ra Ra. So they both scale off of Ra, which means that we can scale attunement. There's a lot of ways to scale a lot of attunement, it turns out. Like for instance, Hands of Judgment. Now, Hands of Judgment, it's a good item, but it's also a really good just stat stick. Whenever you need a lot of attunement, right, and you need a lot of fire pen, this turns out to be one of the stronger items in the game because not only does it come with all this attunement and fire pen on it, it also has a really low LP value, so you can get like really good stats on it very quickly, right? So overall, this is one of our main benefits for stacking attunement with the Ra rune, which is amazing. uh, the other items in the build, there's actually we're actually right now we're scaling with the Bone Clamor Barb Root. It is giving us about like 100 to like 120-ish ward per second right now, which is very cheap, mind you. The Bone Clamor Barb Root's actually a really cheap way of getting a bunch of ward for free. I don't think it's like the best way of getting a bunch of ward for free, but it's definitely the cheapest because I'll be honest, when I threw this character together, all I did was just make sure to include some necrotic res rolls on my rings and all that, and bam, all of a sudden I have a decent amount of stable ward, right? I'm at like 900 stable ward when just standing in town. And you know what? Sometimes we just need items like this that aren't like the best, but work until you can find a different way to scale ward, which is what I would heavily suggest you doing. Now, I am missing a few pieces to the puzzle. The main piece of the puzzle that I'm missing for this kind of build is, of course, the fire pen with invocations. This affix goes on helmets and, of course, body armor. But sadly, I don't have any LP yet, as this is the start of a new character, so I wouldn't have any LP on anything, right? And overall, like, I do think the build is great. Now, the other invocations could use a touch, maybe a little bit of buff and damage here or there. Maybe we can make some of the other invocations work, but they are definitely going to be high investment builds. They're not just like, oh, like, I throw the invocation on and all of a sudden I do a gabillion damage. You have to actually put in a lot of effort to make these work, which is completely fine because they seem like as though they're very rewarding when you finally get them set up. I just really like the fact that my build can take advantage of two different invocations, one for clear and one for single target. It's very amusing because of that fact. But yeah, all that being said, this has been Dread. We're gonna go in game and talk about the builds some more in detail. All right, here we are in game with the character. First thing I want to let you guys know, we're going to talk about how to actually properly manage your invocations for this build. So we're mainly building around immutable order. This means that the skills in our bar will affect our runes. So for instance, I have a Hio and Ra Ra. This will make, of course, Igneous Rain, which is most for single target, right? Now, of course, to swap into clear, what we do is we swap out Runebolt for Frostwall, and bam, now we have, of course, a Hydra, which is all of our clear. We're not actually really building into Hydra much. We're not grabbing the Hydra. Like the Hydra can do a lot more damage, but I'll be honest, when I was playing this build, right, I was using, like, even if they nerf Hydra, it's fine because the version I was playing before, where I was literally just playing with this setup, right, with you know, with this Igneous Rain. For the most part, it was fine. It was a little annoying because you have to wait 6 seconds to clear, and the clear isn't like that good. But it was still working. It was still functional. I was having a good time with it. I just know that some people they would like to have different options. So technically, you can swap the Runebolt and the Frostwall to change it up. But overall, the build's been enjoyable, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, there are two different functions for this build, like I said. Either go for Igneous Rain or you can go for Hydra. But yeah, let's talk about the skills, shall we? So for Runic Invocation here, of course, we take 1 point travel into attuned approach, 1 point travel into scribe patterns, 1 point into author of Arcana. This gives it a large, chunky cooldown, but it also makes it so that it costs no mana and also gives you a bunch of more damage. This note here makes it so that, like I said, it's based on your bar and you can manipulate that at will, which is cool. You can also grab the cooldown here so that we can get it to a decent amount of cooldown. Right now, I've got it to 6 seconds. So far, that's felt great. And of course, 4 points into Unbridled Ruin for damage per rune consumed. 1 point into Elemental Lore for a lot of pen. Right now, I have like 60 intelligence, so this is giving me 20 pen. And then 2 points into Devastating Starfall for more per rune type, so 16% more damage. Then we grab 4 points into Runic Energy here. This is giving us a lot of more damage. So the normal Hydrohedron build, from what I'm seeing, is just spamming Hydrohedron. Well, this setup, we actually kind of just wait and set up one Hydrohedron every so often. And of course, we get the double cast on the Hydrohedron, so we end up getting 2 Hydrohedrons, which is really cool. Yeah, that's my Runic Invocation tree. I really hope to test out some of the other invocations, but so far these have been the ones that have stood out to me. Runebolt is just a utility tree. Main thing we care about is Rune Weaver stacks and Dissolve and Conquer, just giving us all of that more damage. We can get up to 21% more damage, global damage with elemental damage, as long as we're armor shredding, which I do have armor shred on the amulet here, as you can tell, which means that we are reaching armor shred cap on this build, which is great. Or not armor shred cap, but like the cap for this node specifically, right? We take 4 points to Arcanus. We make sure that it only stays lightning, so that has the lightning tag, so that it's gone for us. Then 5 points to Arcane Overcharge, because I like seeing the extra projectiles. Technically, early on, when you're having problems with crit, you can run Cosmic Tapestry. That can make your Runic Invocations crit more, but I don't actually need that crit chance right now, which is great. First, we have Flame Rush. Flame Rush, we're running 100% utility. We just have the mana efficiency cooldown, dots, the buff duration, the ward per second, and the frenzy. One thing I want to let you guys know is tier 4 Jirla. I'm going to be honest, I tried it with this build. Flame Rush is absolutely god awful in tier 4 Jirla. There are better builds to do tier 4 Jirla with, or you just completely ignore Flame Rush. And if you're going to ignore Flame Rush, you do need to spec into Cosmic Tapestry to give yourself enough base crit or Runic Invocation, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time with T4 Jirla. So I would heavily suggest not running Flame Rush on T4 Jirla. But for Monoliths, it's fucking cracked, which I love. Then Frostwall here. There's two important notes. First one, of course, is the broken one, the prepared wards. This is really strong, but to be honest, like we don't actually need it. I played a few monos without it, and you don't actually need it. It's just like really strong, obviously, right? uh, right now, but you don't actually need it to like push high corruption and stuff like that. It just helps a lot, which is cool. It just makes your average ward count go up much higher for a little bit. And of course, aspirants of rival. This is the most important node in the entire tree. This is the most important node for like any runic invocation build currently. So the concept here is when we put down Frostwall, it gets 30% more damage per second for the next spell we cast when we walk through it. So in a boss fight, you'll watch me. I will place it down before I'm attacking, right? I'll wait a few seconds, then I'll dash through it, right? And then cast my skill, which will make my Runic Invocation do a lot more damage. So this is very important for the build to function. Just so I want to let you know that because it gives you that extra edge against bosses. And of course, Flame Ward here. It's the stereotypical Flame Ward setup, of course. Yeah, that's pretty much it for skills. Let's talk about some passives here. So the main passives here is just to try to get as much word retention as possible. Intelligence. We are stacking intelligence, which is important for later, as I'll show you. We're grabbing this node, which is giving us all of our crit thanks to our intelligence stacking, which is cool. Then we're grabbing 8 points into this for the less damage taken, 1 point travel into this, eventually 8 points in arcane focus for the intelligence, this to give us some more ward per second, this to get us some more intelligence. And I'm not capped on my crit right now, so we're actually using this to mitigate crits a little bit right now. I would heavily suggest not running this node and running something else eventually, putting these points elsewhere. When you actually get cap crit avoid, I'll be honest, this build was kind of a rush job. So like I wasn't able to cap my crit avoid because my gear is kind of bad, as I'll show you in a bit. 6 points into Edict of Scion. This just gives us a lot of extra ward whenever we're using Hydra and all that in our Runic Invocation. We get a bunch of free ward from it, and we want as much area as possible. 6 points into Inscribed Instruments, of course. This is 72% crit multi with the wand. A lot of crit multi, really good. And 8 points in Never Late. This is important. This is where I'm getting all of my base crit for my skills right now, because my mana cost on Hydra and of course, what is it called? Igneous Rain is over 30 mana. So you actually get 32% crit chance on the next spell, which is fucking sick. I love that. 8 points on Decree for the more damage, 8 points in Ancient Inscriptions. This node is very important as this allows us to scale a lot of cooldown recovery speed. Right now I have 60 intelligence, so if we divide 60 by 4, that's about like, it's like 16% cooldown recovery speed from this node, which is cool. It's great. Then 2 points in the Runeward Inferno. We're getting a lot more armor against bosses and stuff thanks to this node. This node's really strong. So we only have 27% armor and we get 40% more from here. And then, of course, we get 60% more from this node because we have plenty of shock chance and our Igneous Rain hits a lot. So this gives us a lot of free armor on bosses, which is cool. Then 5 points to the Jagged Veil. This gives us 20% more damage and also, of course, gives us Ward on Crit, which is cool. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the blessings here. We have Crit Multi here, of course. Then Crit Avoid. Eventually you'd want a better roll. And then, of course, get a Crit Avoid roll on your gear. Armor percent like last time. And then Armor Flat here. That's pretty much it for the blessings. There's not really much different. It's just scaling as much armor flat as possible. Yeah. Now for gearing here. So this is not needed, but it is all of my ward per second right now. This is what makes me feel okay when I'm not like actually casting anything. Like gives me a decent amount of ward per second. You don't, like I said, you don't technically need this. There are better helmets. There's like better ways of gaining ward. This is just by far one of the cheapest ways of gaining a bunch of ward. But as you can tell, we're getting about a 100 ward per second because of this. And that may not seem like much, but like I said, for how cheap my gear is, I'm about to show you, it's very nice as we're doing like 300 corruption with like no gear essentially. My amulet is absolute trash. I just wanted the shred on hit, of course. My wand here, this is actually pretty good. This is about the kind of wand you'd want. Pretty much every single modifier you'd want on here, right? My fundamental criterion, low rolled. So we only have 24% more damage instead of 36% more, right? Which sucks. We could get a much better one. This is a very common chest, so getting like 2 LP on it might be really easy to do. And getting that, of course, that fire pen with invocations. I just want to let you guys see it here. fire pen with invocations. I just want to make sure you guys know that this is probably the way to go. Where is it? I actually don't know where it is. I don't have any affixes of it right now. But yeah, fire pen with invocations eventually on this chest would be very strong. My catalyst, my catalyst is great. Eventually you'd go for an int stacking one or like a ward stacking one. I believe you don't have to actually run a shield on this build if you don't want to, but it's up to you. You can either run a shield or not if you want some extra chunk, but I just went for the intelligence stacking. My rings are actually pretty good. I'm just stacking a bunch of course, necrotic res for my ward generation, right? And then attunement. We want as much attunement as possible because we're scaling the third node, the raw rune one. So we want as much attunement as possible. So we're grabbing as much as I can. Right now, our chest is giving us about 126% more damage, which is cool. Belt here, I just wanted cooldown recovery speed. Everything else is terrible on it. As you can tell, we could get a lot more necrotic res than this as well, which would give us a lot more ward per second, which would be great. Uh, like I said, my gloves, necrotic res. I wish I hit attunement, but whatever. Boots here, cooldown recovery speed, attunement, and movement speed. Eventually, we'd want necrotic res here too. Here on this, we just grabbed damage, crit multi, some reses. But as you can tell, my gear is not very good. You could very well easily push this to an absolute extreme with like getting an LP fundamental criterion, LP barber root, or swapping into a different ward generation setup. And I just for idols, I just have some increased damage and some ward retention and their threat of ambition. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the character. That's pretty much it for the build. Um, like I said, this build was okay. Its playstyle is different from everything else I've ever played so far in last Epoch. It might be an acquired taste, but I have plans on testing more invocations in the future. With all that being said, this has been Dread, off to play something else. Bye.